Well, I hoped you have fun killing demons and such. Now, how did you do on the instructions? The first thing to keep in mind, my standard disclaimer whenever we do any of these kind of videos, is that my entire job here is to look at this as a learning opportunity. Therefore, I'm going to point out the things that went wrong because I have to read like a stupidly literal, stupidly critical reader. More importantly for you, though, please don't take any of this personally. I'm just trying to point out enough stuff so that you have a better idea when you head into your major assignment. Let's face it, this is far from an ideal situation working with someone else over a computer line on something that you had a week to do, which isn't enough time, blah, blah, blah. So if you got it done, I'm quite happy with that. Whenever we work with student stuff, whenever I ask you to revise stuff, it's because it's a learning opportunity. This is your first chance to practice doing an actual set of instructions in this class. And hopefully this experience doing the instructions is going to mean that you're going to have a much easier time and do a much better job on the major assignment, the instructions assignment. So, I'm proud of all of you for doing it. You did a great job. Cool. I'm kind of curious to see what you thought of that early a video game technology. But more importantly, I want to see how you turn this into a set of technical instructions. Let's look at them. The first thing we need to know when we're talking about making instructions is that there are some definite requirements. There are some parts that we need to have in every set of instructions. Title, warnings and safety information, an introduction, components, the instructions broken down into steps and sub-steps, and a conclusion. This shouldn't be news to you because this was in the instructions video we watched, but never hurts to review, huh? Clear sentences in an imperative voice. Do this, don't do that. You don't want to go, you should do this. No, get the language as simple and as direct as possible. Format, headings, list, images, and text need to work together. If there's a step and a picture for that step, that should be combined. You don't have a giant step of 5 things without a picture. You don't have a picture that stands separate from everything else. Label all images, refer to those labels in the text, special notices, and following the standard rules of document design. Now, with the instructions assignment and with the sample Doom instructions that we're going to go over here in a minute, the important thing to keep in mind is, while we might be talking about video games, the major assignment is to do a set of technical instructions, something that looks professional. Not a video game guide. This is just the subject we're talking about, not the form it should take. We want the form to be as professional and as real-life technical as possible. And you can do that by doing instructions about anything. Just make sure you're following the rules, keeping the appropriate tone, having all the appropriate parts. The other thing, and you've already seen the video on this, when we go over instructions, is that we really need to have the broken leg test applied. Is this a guide or a step-by-step set of instructions? Would you feel confident that your grandmother could succeed by following this? And that's something that tends to happen with the instructions assignment, is that you get any number of people like, go here and kill everybody. Well, that doesn't really pass the broken leg test, does it? So, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with the art group. This does break it down into steps, but each of the steps tends to have a certain amount of things in it. Remember the cell phone manual principle. If I'm going back to do this level and Am I going to generally need to read the entire set of instructions, or am I going to look for the one thing that I need to know? And that's why breaking this down into a few different tasks with different steps would be helpful. The language is clear. I'm not exactly sure that it's the kind of thing you would use when you're writing a technical set of instructions, but the language is clear and more or less direct. But all we have are the instructions here. Educations has a few more sections to it. We have the introduction, we have the caution, we have the game components, which is really only the game controls. We don't really have a full bevy of weaponry, of characters and such, and those are all very important parts. Completing the first round, they have a map. The map is a helpful thing to have. Notice on the first page, there is a certain amount of white space here. Remember, white space tends to draw the eye towards it and away from the text. Main tasks as a heading is on a different page than the tasks. Now, the good thing here is this is broken down into a number of tasks, each with several steps. It would have worked a lot better if it was labeled as that. Room 1, Room 2, Room 3, so on and so forth. And whenever you have step-by-step instructions, you should have them numbered. If you have to do these things in order, having numbers is the proper way to do it. They have pictures of each task. That's cool. But they're not labeled and they're not referred to in the body. Technology is the longer of these. Interesting thing is, this was turned in the standard 8.5 by 11 paper size. Having each page shrunk down to this level looks about right. So, if this is the size you want it, make your original document this size. It's perfectly fine. There's an index, a table of contents. Nice. Introduction. You always have something about the subject right at the beginning. Components, and they're broken up into several different areas. We have the pickups, the things that you can pick up, the weapons, the fist, the pistol, the shotgun. We have the game mechanics, which is nice. If I'm being nitpicky, and I'm a teacher, so this is kind of my job, I will say that there can be some work on the fonts. Serif fonts for the body text, check, but the headings can be in a sans serif font, and that will add a different level of visual distinction. It also wouldn't be a bad idea if the pictures were all the same size. In a professional document, you're going to want to have stuff lined up as much as possible. The keyboard controls being outlined is really nice, and they're numbered so we have direct things to reference when we look at the picture. A bit on the mouse, cool. We have a map with nice little icons, cool. The step-by-step instructions I kind of wish were a little bit more in-depth. They're not divided into tasks, and that would have made this a more doable thing. Plus, when we haven't talked about the broken leg test. And step 3, grab the enemy shotgun and rush up the stairs as fast as possible. Fire at any enemies at the top of the stairs if they respawn. Well, if they're there, tell me that they're going to be there. The broken leg test is if I tell someone to go do this thing, you're going to fire at this person who's standing over here, this person who's standing over here, and this person who's standing over here. Simply saying, kill all 5 people, isn't necessarily going to do it. Now, I love the setup to the instructions in this document. I just wish the instructions themselves would take up a little bit more space and have pictures to reference and so on and so forth. Keep in mind, as I said at the beginning, though, I know that this is a homework assignment. This is a group work assignment, and you didn't really have adequate time for it. So overall, I think this was done very well. Transportation has a 40-item list. You know what happens when someone runs into a 40-item list? Well, if you want to simulate it, take one finger, put it in front of your lips, and go... It's the same thing as if I run into a 20-line paragraph. Chances are it's going to be overwhelming to me. Shiny object principle says it's going to be hard for me to keep attention all the way through this. The cell phone manual principle tells me that if I want to find out how I do one thing, like, say, I forget how to get through room 3, well, this isn't really going to tell me, is it? It'll tell me, but I'll have to hunt and hunt and hunt for it. Would you want to do that if you're doing someone's broken leg? Once again, if we focus on this as a learning experience and just try to see what lessons we can take out of it, it's going to be the most valuable. So the lessons I always seem to take out of it whenever I go over these with my classes. 1, the cell phone manual principle is fairly important here. You got to write these documents, as particularly instructions, as if someone is going to go through the whole thing once maybe, and then they're probably going to look for the specific parts. So organization gets to be an important part of it. After all, that ties into the broken leg test as well. I mean, if someone is setting a broken leg and they forget step 3, do I really want them to have to thumb through 500 steps while they're looking for the one thing which will help ease my pain from my broken leg? And I'm going, ah! Sorry. Second thing, make sure you have all of the required components. Make sure you have the introduction, the warnings. The cautions are usually a legal thing that you have to put in. 3, make sure you're spelling it out in enough detail. The broken leg test comes up again here. If I'm giving this to my grandmother and I tell her, okay, go in here and shoot all 4 people, that's not really going to be enough information for her to do it. She's going to want to know where the 4 people are. So tell her, move cannon over 32 degrees to the left, shoot this person in the face. Move directly in front of you and shoot blah, blah, blah. And don't forget the design function either. The design really plays into usability here. I mean, that's not only having clear sections, which ties into the cell phone manual principle, but if the images are labeled and referred to in the text, then that's going to help me figure out the steps. So I hope you found this helpful as a learning experience. See you next video, people.